Is Arab-Islamic civilization the biggest superstition in the history of Muslims and the world? Is it true that Islam as a religion created a great civilization? Are religions at all made or created by civilizations? Why are the Arabs of Arabian Desert the only ones in the history of humanity who built a civilization outside their homeland? Why did they make it, as they say, in the countries they occupied? Is it true that they taught the Egyptians, the Levant, the Al-Masry and the Iraqis how to be gentlemanly civilized? Is it true that they are the reason behind Western civilization? Welcome to With Shoaib Show. Welcome my friends to With Shoaib Show. Our paramount question today, is the Muslim Arab-Islamic civilization a myth, a lie, and did not exist? Is it true that it is the largest theft in history, meaning that the Arab invaders occupied peoples and stole their civilization and attributed it to themselves? Or is it true and great, and this is what most of the Sheikhdom and all the Brotherhood and Islamists say, and that it has provided a lot to humanity, and that without it, Europe would not have progressed? I beg your pardon to see the images displayed on the screen, of the ancient Egyptian civilization, and of some people who lived in the Arabian desert, not 1,400 years ago, but much closer to that. As you can see, is it logical for these to teach Egyptians, Levants and Iraqis civilization? Did they spread science, justice, equality and freedom? Let's see. No Arab-Muslim historian, biased towards these invaders, mentioned that among them there was a scientist in astronomy, medicine or architecture, meaning that they were not even like Napoleon's army, which occupied Egypt for a period. He had scholars in all fields, along with the printer. What is the meaning of civilization, and what is its definition? In the dictionary Armahit, its meaning, present, presence, capital, civilization, and urbanization, other than the nomadism. Civilization, urban residence. The people of the cities live in a civilization, in an urbanization unlike the Bedouins. That is, civilization by definition is the opposite of the Bedouin desert tribes, and any tribes anywhere. Muslim sociologist and historian Ibn Khaldun states, if the Arabs conquer countries, they will be destroyed quickly. The reason for this is that they are a brutal nation. And they had an alienation against the discipline of government, and not being submissive to politics, and this nature is contrary to urbanism and contradicts it. Chaos is fatal to humans and spoils urbanization. That is, urbanization and civilization need a stable agricultural society and a fixed system of government, and this is impossible for warring tribes. This applies to any tribes anywhere, the Turks in Central Asia at the time, the Vikings in Northern Europe, for example. That is, it is not a racist characteristic designated to Arabs in the middle of the desert at the time. Therefore, the foremost sanctification of the warring tribes is dedicated to the warrior, and the same sanctity, or even less, is not shared by the farmer or the craftsman. In contrast to the ancient Egyptian civilization, there was a reverence for the soldier who protected Egypt, of course, but there was also a reverence for the one who makes civilization, and a parallel reverence for the higher values that preserve the cohesion of a stable agricultural society. For example, in ancient Egypt, there was a veneration of women, because they are partners in the creation of civilization. Unlike the desert tribes, in which it is common that women are merely a tool for the enjoyment of warriors, and a method for giving birth to children in order to become warriors. Muslim sociologist and historian Ibn Khaldun completes a comparison between the invaders and the peoples they occupied. As for the East, crafts were established in it, since the ancient nations, from the Persians, the Nabateans, the Copts, Greece, and the Romans. That is why Muslim sociologist and historian Ibn Khaldun says that the Arabs of that time destroyed Yemen, Iraq, the Levant and North Africa. This is also why, according to Ibn Khaldun, the bearers of knowledge were mostly non-Arabs. Even in the juristic law, which is related to Islam, which is the religion of the Arabs, most of the jurists and scholars of Arabic language are not Arabs. That is, they did not have any civilization. For example, the clothes of leader of the Arab Muslim army that invaded Egypt, Amr ibn al-As, are described by Muslim historian al-Waqidi, saying, he wears a woolen robe and on his head is a turban made by Yemen, dyed yellow, and he has turned it like a ball over his head, and in the waist, he wears his sword and spear. He sticked to that outfit while he was heading to the Roman military leader occupying Egypt, in bilateral talks. When the interpreter saw him, he laughed. Amr said, "Why are you laughing, O Christian?" The companion Amr replied that the Arabs carried arms as their motto, but he rather carried arms lest he should confront a war, so that the arms would be like a fortress for him. But commander of the Arab army that occupied Egypt Ibn al-As realized the enormity of the difference between his clothes and the clothes of the Romans, so he imposed on the Egyptians a new tax, which is to give each soldier of the invaders a dinar, a meal, a penny, a turban and a slipper, as Al-Masry reports. If we forget that what he did is theft and thuggery, but that this explains the huge difference between these invaders and the Egyptians. As for the houses in the desert of the Arab island, the houses were rare, and if they exist, they are certainly not like the houses of the Egyptians. The old Egyptian house was divided into a spacious courtyard, a large reception room, a storage room, back sheds, and an oven, apart from, of course, the bedrooms. In the courtyard, the pottery vessels stand in the corners, filled with the fresh water of the Nile. And the storage rooms had pottery pots in which they stored things like lentils, for example. There were also fine kitchen utensils. In many homes there were wooden looms, spindles and linen threads, so that Egyptian women could make clothes, curtains and mattresses. They used to sell the surplus in the market. With regard to the houses at that time in the deserts of the Arabian Peninsula, most of them were modest and poor, built of mud and palm leaves, with black hair sacks on them. Women walk under black covers. As for the girls in Egypt, they worked in the wineries and in the granaries, and they also participated in the collection of vineyards. As you can see, there is a huge cultural difference. When the Arab invaders occupied Egypt, what did they do? They attributed everything that the Egyptians made to themselves, under the name of the Arab-Islamic Civilization. I mean, the leader of the army of Muslim Arab invaders Amr ibn al-As, who was ashamed of his dress and appearance, attributed to himself and to the Arabs the clothes that the Egyptians produced them. They said it was the production of the Arab-Islamic Civilization. They became no longer Egyptian civilized products, but have become Arab and Islamic civilized ones. Namely, a theft. I will tell you examples of the products that the Muslim Arabs stole from the peoples they occupied. There is a museum in Egypt called the Islamic Museum, which has exhibits of textile art that was known as al-Kabati. This is normal because Egypt had textile factories. Can you imagine textile factories at that time, since thousands of years? There are factories that specialize in clothes for the rich and other factories for the production of public common clothes. In that museum, the signatures of the Egyptian weavers are still present on the turbans that they call Arab-Islamic. Those textiles had decorative units of the Egyptian character, meaning the Egyptian civilization that loved drawings of birds, pigeons and grapes. Dr. Hassan al-Bashu in his book The Art of Islamic Painting is a reference in this regard. You will notice that he also calls it Islamic, not Egyptian. He says that there is an Egyptian turban of white linen decorated with a horizontal strip woven from colored wool with a drawing of a bird, on top of it is a strip of Arabic writing in Kufic script, and the name of the owner of the turban is written Suhail bin Musa, and its manufacture is dated in 88 R. The imprints of Egyptian civilization are also embodied in the architecture of the mosques themselves, in the hollow mihrab, prayer niche, taken from the mihrab of the Egyptian church. The Muslim historian al-Baladhiri mentions in his book Fatu al-Buldan that al-Walid sought the help of the Copts, meaning Egyptians, Regardless of their religions, in rebuilding Medina Mosque, Damascus Mosque and Al-Aqsa Mosque, in addition to a palace for the Caliph, the Arab Muslim ruler, when the Caliph Omar bin Abdulaziz rebuilt the Prophet's mosque in Medina, he entrusted it to Egyptian architects, who built the first hollow mihrab in history. That is, the mosques and architecture built by the Egyptians during the Arab occupation, they called them mosques belonging to the Arab-Islamic Civilization. Although it was not made by people coming from the desert Arab island. So why do we call it an Arab, not an Egyptian civilization? Why do we attribute this to the occupier, not to the native of the country who made it? Why do we originally ascribe it to Islam, and those who made it may not have been Muslims at all? The Egyptian civilization was not only superior in architecture, but in various aspects of life, medicine, pharmacy, chemistry and arithmetic. It was manifested, for example, in the decoration on shell-inlaid wood. This is the arabesque, and the Arab invaders attributed it to themselves. The ancient Egyptians also made metalwork and the manufacture of carpentry and agricultural tools, some of which are still used until now, such as water wheel, water lifting and transportation tools, scythe, and others. The Egyptians also excelled at making 7 types of paper for writing. I repeat, 7 types of paper for writing. This means that there was a flourishing of the sciences of writing, that is, there were books and writers in all fields. All of this will be put under an Arab-Islamic banner, as if they were the ones who produced it. It's weird. The cultural difference between the invaders coming from the Arabian desert and the Egyptians in clothes, is very clear in the Lady Maria, the Coptic, the wife of the Prophet. Arab narrations say that she was adorned in the manner of Egyptian women inherited from their mothers. They use an eyeliner for eyelashes, blue around the eyes, and red for the face. She puts conical earrings in her ears or earrings in the form of a bunch of grapes, and her wrists are adorned with thick bracelets that end with a serpent's head on all sides. A necklace of delicate colored beads adorns the waist and neck, and sometimes she wears silver anklets around her feet. As for the hair, the Egyptians used to comb it in more than one way. For example, in the form of dates, with it raised to the top and decorated with colored ribbons. The clothes were of white linen woven with colored wool, especially the purple color, which was a marvel at the time. There was also a civilized difference in relations, which was part of the traditions of the Egyptian civilization, as the man must only marry one wife forever. And they considered the combination of 2 wives to be adultery, and they also prohibited concubinage, meaning that you have a lover or a maidservant. And as stated in the laws, whoever has one wife and has intercourse with his female slave shall be punished. We come to an important question: does Islam or any religion create a civilization? The answer is no. It is not the function of the religion to create a civilization, it is just a way to communicate with our Lord. Even if it is used as a colonial tool to build empires, this does not mean that it is the one that creates civilization. It may play a disruptive or motivating role, but it is not a major role anyway. There is evidence that there were Jews and Christians on the island and they did not create civilization, while the Jews and Christians of Egypt, the Levant and Iraq made a great one. Secondly, if this is true, then why did these Arab Muslim invaders not establish civilization and urbanization back in their original countries in the Arabian Peninsula, as there is not, as I said, a single building left there? For example, what they call, for example, Islamic architecture, does not exist in the Arabian Peninsula, the source of Islam, but you find it in Egypt, the Levant, Iraq, etc. This brings us to a dangerous point, which is that civilizations are attributed to the place of their manufacture. The Greek civilization is attributed to Greece, the Persian civilization is attributed to Persia, the Babylonian is to Babylon and the Egyptian is to Egypt, etc. And what they call Arab civilization is the only one in the history of humanity which is not attributed to the Arab countries. Only the Arabs of the Arabian desert are the only ones who attribute the civilizations of other peoples to themselves. They are the only ones who speak of a civilization not found in their country of origin but in the countries they occupied. Therefore, it is important that we suggest not to use the term Arab-Islamic civilization, but instead use the term civilizations of peoples during the Arab occupation, the civilization of the Egyptians, for example, during the Arab-Islamic occupation. Allow me to emphasize it to you, civilizations of peoples during the Arab occupation, the civilization of the Egyptians, for example, during the Arab-Islamic occupation, not the Arab-Islamic civilization. What confirms this idea is what Muslim historian and sociologist Ibn Khaldun said, that crafts and vocation are found in urban areas. And the urban regions are not resided by the Arabs, but non-Arabs. A well-established civilization like the Persian, Iran, for example, the pundit in Arabic grammar is Persian, Sibawayh, and after him Al-Sagagi. Likewise, the hadith reporters, most of them were from the non-Arabs. Scholars of Usul al-Fiqh are all non-Arabs, and scholars of theology, as well as most of the commentators, Muslim jurists and historians such as al-Bukhari, Bukhara, Uzbekistan. Imam Muslim bin al-Hajjaj, Nizaba, Iran. Al-Nasai, Nisa, Turkmenistan. Al-Termi, Termi, Uzbekistan. Bin Major, Kazvin, Iran. Sibawayh, Shiraz, Iran. Muhammad bin Jarir al-Tabari, Tabaristan, Iran. Al-Makrizi, Egypt. Ibn Sina, Persia, Iran. Abbas ibn Firnas, Berber, born in Spain. Ibn Battuta, Berber, born in Morocco. Al-Farabi, Turkestan. Ibn al-Bitter, Andalusia, Spain. Ibn Rushd, Andalusia, Spain. The one who built Al-Sakra Mosque is Raja bin Hawa, a Christian who converted to Islam, and with him was Yazid bin Salam, a Christian, as well, and he was a slave of Abd al-Malik bin Marwan. I mean, the mosque was not built by an Arab, but the occupier was an Arab. As you have seen, most scholars are not Arabs. That is why sociologist and historian Ibn Khaldun says, people of the East, meaning Iraq, Iran, and Egypt, have mental and theology sciences, due to the abundance of their urbanization and the establishment of civilization in them. This does not mean any contempt or racism towards the Arabs. They are like the Tatars and Turks in Central Asia and Vikings in Northern Europe and others. Warring tribes were naturally incapable of creating a civilization. The Arab invaders were not only satisfied that they committed the largest civilized theft in the history of humanity, but also added an Islamic designation to it in order to grant it holiness, so it became an Arab-Islamic civilization. If you reject it, you reject Islam. This is not acceptable. While it is difficult to find a civilization attributed to a religion, you will not find, for example, a Hindu civilization, but there is an Indian civilization that was produced in India. There is no Christian civilization, but there is a Roman civilization made by the people of Rome, Italy. There is no Buddhist civilization, but there is a Chinese one. That is, civilization is attributed to the people who produced it, not to the occupying invader. It is attributed to the place, not to any religion whatsoever. We have innumerable scholars who were not Arabs, that is, they have nothing to do with the deserts of the Arabian Peninsula. Avicenna, for example, a Persian philosopher and physician from Iran. Why do they attribute him to the Arabs, while he is Persian, meaning Iranian? Abbas ibn Firnas, a Berber scholar who was born in Spain, namely, Spanish and not Arab. Why is this great scientist attributed to those who occupied his country, Spain? Why not say a Spanish Muslim scholar who speaks Arabic? Ibn Battuta belongs to the Al-Masry, born in Tangiers in Morocco, a non-Arab Moroccan. Ibn al-Bitter is Abdullah bin Ahmed al-Malki, referring to his birthplace, the city of Malaga in Andalusia, meaning Andalusian, i.e., Spanish and not Arab. There are also books attributed to the Arabs, among them, the 1001 Nights, also called the Arabian Nights, and its origin is Persian, Iran. And Kalila and Dimna is originally Indian stories, which have been translated into Persian, Syriac, and then Arabic. When a branch of the Quraysh tribe invaded the Iberian Peninsula, or what they called Andalusia, it was not a barren desert without humans, but of course there were Christian, Jewish and other citizens. And the conquistadors mixed with the Spanish people in Andalusia, not the other way around. I mean, it was a colonial occupation. Just as the Arab invaders mingled with the Egyptians and fused into them, not the other way around. Because the least civilized is the one who merges with the most civilized, not vice versa. Like all the minorities that lived in Egypt from Greeks, Italians and others. Of course, they still have influences, but it is difficult for them to become the mainstream. That is why it is difficult to attribute Ibn Battuta to the Arabs, as he is a Moroccan Berber, a Muslim who speaks Arabic, not an Arab. And Ibn Rushd, the philosopher, we attribute him to Andalusia, Spain, Europe. I mean, a European Muslim who speaks Arabic, but he does not necessarily belong to what they call the Arabs of the peninsula, and all that was produced from a civilization in Andalusia, not all Muslims, we are supposed to attribute to the place, European Spain. And if it is correct to attribute countries to the Arabs of the island, why did they not make Andalus again in their original country in the desert? What happened is the biggest theft and forgery in the history of Muslims, and even in the history of humanity. These Arab invaders occupied and ruled civilized peoples by force, and I think they corrupted them. They also stole their civilized products and called them Arabic and Islamic. It is not true that the peoples who now speak the Arabic language, Arabs, it is not true what they say that language is an identity, and therefore, we are Arabs just because we speak Arabic. Therefore, the Egyptians, Tunisians, Syrians, and others are Arabs. This is not true. They are peoples who only speak Arabic. Argentina speaks Spanish, and the religion of most of its people is Christianity, yet you will not find anyone who says we belong to the Spanish Christian civilization. We have countries in Africa that speak French, such as Burundi and Cameroon, and you will not find anyone who might say we belong to the French Christian civilization. Also, it is difficult to find someone who says in France Christian French civilization or the restoration of Christian French Empire. Conclusion. The main idea of this episode, it is not that the Arab-Islamic civilization is bad nor good, it has given a lot or a little. It does not exist at all. This is one of the biggest lies in the life of Muslims. An invention that played a very big role in their lag. Because it created an illusion, which is that you, as a Muslim, in order to advance, must establish the state of Islam, and this state occupies other countries, and then we will restore the Arab-Islamic civilization. This is what Muslim sheikhs dream of and try to achieve, as well as all the Brotherhood and Islamists, including ISIS. Because the Islamic Caliphate and the Arab-Islamic civilization was a paradise. The loyalty of a Muslim is not to his country, but to this lie that has become a myth. In fact, were not more than an Arab colonial empire, and after that the Ottoman Empire, they occupied and destroyed civilized peoples, and stole their products and called it an Arab-Islamic civilization. As a Muslim, I do not believe that Islam made a civilization, but if there is a Muslim who believes that religions make civilizations, I suggest that he shall change his Islam, and believe in the ancient Egyptian gods, because they created a much greater civilization, and modern science is not able to explore many things in it. Or to become a Catholic Christian, because these people have created a civilization greater than the Islamic one, and it is the Western civilization in which they live in the best welfare. Indeed, Christianity is not founded the Western civilization, it may have an impact, but such civilization was built by the free, democratic secular system. This is what might give Muslims a wonderful life on earth. It is not a return to the past to imitate colonial empires. A life in which there is a great deal of freedom, justice and prosperity. Thank you and see you my best friends and fellows in future episodes, God willing.